long before the shiny screens of Apple Watches and Samsung Gears wrapped themselves around people's wrists, before fitness trackers became as common as regular watches. And even before the word smartwatch existed in the tech world, the Simpsons had already shown it. Yes, in the middle of an ordinary episode filled with jokes, family drama, and silly humor. There it was, a character casually talking into a wristwatch. For most viewers at the time, it was nothing more than a throwaway gag, one of those cartoon exaggerations meant to make you laugh and then forget. But years later, that very scene would be resurrected by fans who gasped in disbelief. Wait a second, The Simpsons predicted smartwatches before they even existed. To truly understand how wild this prediction feels, let's go back in time. Picture the world in the early 1990s. Mobile phones were giant blocks, heavy, expensive, and only used by the wealthy or business elites. Ordinary people didn't carry them. Internet access was slow, rare, and only beginning to spread. Watches, meanwhile, were nothing more than accessories to tell time or show off fashion. Nobody, not even the boldest tech company, was thinking about merging phones and watches into one sleek gadget that could sit on your wrist. And yet, The Simpsons showed it. Out of nowhere, a cartoon had imagined the future. And this is where the fascination begins. Because The Simpsons is not just a cartoon, it has become a cultural mirror, a crystal ball hidden inside satire. Over and over again, it has planted small jokes about technology, politics, and society, jokes that later turned into reality. The smartwatch is one of those classic examples that make you stop and ask yourself, was this pure coincidence? Or were they actually seeing the future? Now let me throw this question back to you, the audience. When you hear that The Simpsons showed a smartwatch decades before Apple launched it, do you instantly think it's a lucky guess? Or do you feel a shiver as if they somehow knew what was coming? It's easy to say it's just coincidence. After all, plenty of spy movies and comics had already toyed with the idea of watches that could talk. James Bond, in particular, often had futuristic gadgets that looked like magic. Maybe the Simpsons writers were inspired by those stories, added their own comedic twist, and moved on. That's one way to explain it. But here's the twist. The Simpsons didn't show the smartwatch as a fancy spy gadget. They didn't exaggerate it like a laser-shooting James Bond watch. They showed it as if it were ordinary, like a casual tool for everyday life. That detail matters, because when Apple finally introduced its smartwatch, it wasn't marketed as a spy toy. It was marketed as a normal product for regular people. That's what makes the Simpsons version look eerily accurate. Think about how life has changed today. People no longer just check the time on their wrist. They check messages, calls, health statistics, even their heartbeat. Some people don't go a single hour without glancing at their smartwatch. Fitness enthusiasts track their steps, business people answer calls, teenagers reply to texts, and even kids play games on their wrists. Something that began as a joke in a cartoon has now become part of our daily routine. And this leads us to another big question. Do we create technology because we imagine it first, or does technology surprise us out of nowhere? In other words, did The Simpsons simply capture an idea floating in the air, an idea waiting to be invented, or did their joke actually plant seeds in the minds of future inventors? What if a kid in the 90s saw that episode, laughed at the talking watch, and grew up thinking, why not build it for real? Could the cartoon have inspired the real invention? This is what makes the smartwatch prediction so fascinating. It's not just about a gadget. It's about how imagination, comedy, and reality constantly interact. What begins as laughter can transform into innovation. What seems ridiculous at first often becomes the next big thing. And The Simpsons has proven this over and over again. Now imagine being a Simpsons writer in the 90s. You sit in a room, brainstorming jokes, tossing around ideas. Someone says, "Hey, wouldn't it be funny if people started talking into their wristwatches?" Everyone laughs, they animate it, and it becomes part of the episode. Nobody thinks twice. Fast forward 20 years, and suddenly tech companies are spending billions of dollars to make that exact idea a reality. Isn't that insane? And here's where I want to pull you in, the listener. Do you think all of this is just accidental? Or do you believe that writers, artists, and comedians often see the future before the rest of us? Maybe they don't see it with psychic powers, but maybe they understand human behavior so well that they know where we're heading. Because if you look closely, the smartwatch prediction was not just about technology. It was about human desire. Humans have always wanted convenience. We want everything smaller, faster, closer to us. First, we carried phones in bags, then in pockets, then in the palm of our hand, and finally, now, on our wrist. It's a natural progression, and maybe The Simpsons writers simply saw that trend before anyone else. But here's the catch. When we see it in hindsight, it doesn't look so random anymore. It looks like prophecy. It looks like The Simpsons had a crystal ball hidden inside Springfield. And that is why people all around the world share memes, clips, and theories about these predictions. It makes us feel like we are part of a strange, ongoing mystery. A mystery where a cartoon keeps outsmarting reality. And so, the smartwatch prediction remains one of the clearest examples of The Simpsons' bizarre accuracy. It's a silly joke, turned into a billion-dollar industry, shaping how we live, work, and connect. But the story doesn't end there. Because as soon as fans recognized it, they began asking bigger questions. If they were right about this, what else might they be right about? Should we pay more attention to the so-called jokes hidden in future episodes? So here we are, standing in a world where smartwatches are no longer futuristic fantasies, but everyday companions. Yet the strangest part is not the technology itself, but the fact that a cartoon about a yellow family in Springfield had already placed this future in front of us. And that raises the question, how do we even explain this? Was it luck? Was it foresight? Or was it something deeper? Let's first think about the culture of The Simpsons. This show was never just about slapstick humor or family jokes. From the very beginning, it tried to poke fun at society, at politics, at business, and even at the weirdness of human dreams. The writers constantly absorbed the atmosphere of the time, newspapers, magazines, science trends, even random rumors about the future. They turned all of it into comedy. And sometimes, comedy that felt silly in one decade turned into reality in the next. The smartwatch was one such piece of comedy that slipped into the future like a hidden time capsule. But here's something worth reflecting on. The way fans react to these predictions is almost as important as the predictions themselves. When people first saw the Apple Watch, their immediate reaction wasn't only, "Wow, technology has advanced." Instead, many people laughed and said, "Wait, The Simpsons showed this years ago." Suddenly, the product wasn't just a gadget. It was proof of The Simpsons' legendary reputation. This shows how deeply the show has burrowed into our cultural memory. Now think about this. Technology is not invented in a vacuum. Every great invention has a story. Airplanes were once imagined in sketches and science fiction. Submarines were described by Jules Verne before they were engineered. Smartphones appeared in futuristic TV shows like Star Trek before Steve Jobs brought them into our pockets. Could the smartwatch have followed the same path? Could The Simpsons' simple joke have been one of the many cultural sparks that kept the idea alive until technology caught up? This thought leads us to a twist. Maybe the show isn't just predicting, maybe it's shaping. Maybe the people who grew up watching The Simpsons carried those images in their subconscious minds. Years later, when they became inventors, engineers, or CEOs, they turned those subconscious images into reality. If that's the case, then The Simpsons isn't only a mirror of society, but also an invisible architect of our future. And that is both exciting and unsettling. Pause for a moment and ask yourself, do you believe that art and comedy can inspire real inventions? Or do you think inventors would have built the smartwatch anyway, even if The Simpsons had never shown it? Now, let's explore another angle, the psychology of why this prediction grabs so much attention. Human beings are wired to look for patterns. When something coincidental happens, our brain doesn't dismiss it. Instead, it makes it bigger, almost magical. If someone had told you in 1995 that watches would become phones, you might have laughed it off. But when you see that exact idea replayed from an old cartoon, suddenly it feels supernatural. It feels like destiny. And this is why The Simpsons predictions are not just trivia. They become legends. Fuel for endless YouTube videos, articles, and debates. But here's a reality check. The Simpsons has been on air for more than 30 years, with hundreds of episodes and thousands of jokes. Statistically, some of those jokes are bound to align with future events. If you throw enough darts, eventually one hits the bullseye. Could the smartwatch be one of those random bullseyes? Maybe yes. But here's the problem. It wasn't the only one. Trump's presidency, Disney, buying Fox, smart homes, even digital currency, the show has hit the bullseye so many times that people stop believing it's just chance. And the smartwatch prediction is often one of the strongest examples used to argue that maybe, just maybe, something strange is going on here. Now let me ask you directly, if a show has been right more than 10 times about huge world events, would you still call it coincidence? Or would you start wondering about some hidden method behind it? Coming back to smartwatches, the prediction also touches on a deeper theme, the human obsession with shrinking technology. From giant computers that filled whole rooms, we moved to desktops, then to laptops, then to handheld devices, and now to wearables. It's almost like humanity is in a race to fuse technology into our bodies, step by step. First, in the bag, then in the pocket, then on the wrist, and tomorrow, maybe inside our skin. Could it be that the Simpsons writers weren't just guessing, but were simply following this natural path of evolution? That makes sense, right? But then again, doesn't it feel odd that they nailed the visual so perfectly? Not a necklace, not a belt, not glasses, but a wristwatch, the exact form we ended up with. That's what makes the scene so striking. And that's why fans keep replaying it as evidence of prophecy. Now imagine this. You're an audience member, watching that old Simpsons clip where the character talks into the watch. You laugh. You forget about it. Decades later, you glance down at your wrist and realize you are living inside that joke. Doesn't it feel surreal? Almost like fiction turned into fact. Almost like you are living in a world The Simpsons had already sketched out for you. And that is the true magic of these predictions. They blur the line between imagination and reality. They make us question whether our future is really being written by technology labs, or whether it's being whispered to us years earlier by cartoons, novels, and creative minds. But let me leave you with a final twist. If The Simpsons showed smartwatches before they existed, what about the predictions they've shown that haven't come true yet? Should we dismiss them as jokes, or should we brace ourselves for the possibility that they too might one day become real? If we laughed at the smartwatch and then woke up one day wearing one, who's to say the same won't happen with their other bizarre predictions? So here's my question for you, the audience. Do you see The Simpsons as a prophet of the future, or simply as a comedy show with an unbelievable streak of luck? Because whether it's coincidence or prophecy, one thing is certain. The smartwatch prediction is proof that sometimes cartoons don't just make us laugh. Sometimes they show us the world we're going to live in tomorrow, and maybe that's why The Simpsons remains more than just a cartoon. It's a mystery that keeps unfolding, one prediction at a time.